O cholera, czy to Freddy Fazbear? Oh, 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 oh.
Hi, hello, and welcome to another video. It's been a while, but I have a surprise in stock for you. Some of you may already know this man. He's known from the YouTube channel Meneb, and together with him we did a few podcasts in the past. And now I'm very happy to welcome him again, this time on my channel, because back then I was the learner, but now I am the master. And yeah, here he is. Hello.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So, I don't know, for us it's kind of the same thing. We just uploaded to a different channel. But, you know, since I haven't uploaded in ages, I just thought, well, let's just do it on Alex's channel, so why not?
Was a perfect opportunity right now.
Well, I wonder what the theme will be.
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss right now, of course, because if you know, recently the Five Nights at Freddy's movie actually happened. After being stuck in production hell for 8 years. I counted it. 8 years it took. It has been officially released on the 26th of October.
And we've been there on release day.
We were there, yeah, the premiere, we were sitting right there. And yeah, it was quite the movie, wasn't it?
It was. Also, I just thought it was amazing that we had the opportunity to go there on the first day, because we're living in Germany, and like a few years ago when they announced the movie and stuff, I wasn't even sure if it was gonna release in Germany at all. And now we had the possibility to go to the cinema on the first day and watch it, obviously in the original version in English. And yeah, I had a blast.
And you know, the big pro of this was that way we couldn't be spoiled, because we were like one of the first eyes to witness this.
Yes.
So it was like a completely spoiler-free experience, and I'm very grateful for that, because literally a single day after the release, you already had these thumbnails on YouTube spoiling everything. And so, yeah.
Always the same thing, whether new game releases or the movie or...
It's extreme when it comes to FNaF, though.
Also, me personally, I've been waiting for it for 7 years, but it was announced 8 years ago, so obviously I wanted to see it as fast as possible. I was really hyped. I felt a kind of hype before going into the movie. Like, I haven't felt this kind of hype for FNaF, I don't know, since FNaF 6, I think.
Yeah, speaking of the wait, I would say it was worth it. But
yeah, definitely.
There are certainly some things we need to talk about.
Yeah.
This movie is, to make things short for now, it's not a perfect movie.
Obviously not. But I don't think anybody walked in there expecting the perfect movie, so...
Sure. But while we're on the topic, we can get right into the meat, I guess.
Yes, we can.
So, you know, the overall quality of this movie was top-notch. You know, before I go into the detail, I will just quickly cross off the things that I really liked. And those were, of course, the set design, the prop design, the acting, the music, and...
the animatronics.
The animatronics, of course, like, you know, the props, the requisites.
Yeah.
They were amazing. Jim Henson did an amazing job, and the entire set design, really, really great work. The only thing that was a bit lacking was the script, but I mean, yeah, maybe our views may differ a bit from each other, but I think we can agree on one thing: making a FNaF movie and making it coherent in the story is a formidable task, to say the least.
Really, really big challenge, and I think seeing it now, after 8 years, I think they did a pretty good job. You know, if you remember the Scott Cawthon interview after Ultimate Custom Night with Darko, he said back then, I don't know, when came it out, like 2018 or something? I think it was 2018, the interview.
Yeah.
And he said he could have released the movie 3 years ago and he would be 3 movies in now. And I'm so glad that he waited, that he did good deals with Blumhouse. I think the most important thing for me, and I think the movie really shows it, is that Scott had a really big influence in the movie. That Scott was there on set and he could interfere with the script, with the direction. I think it's the best thing ever. Like, I don't want to imagine if somebody from Warner Brothers would have had the last word and stuff, and I think it's really, really great. And big props to Scott that he really did wait. He wanted to make a good movie. He didn't want to make quick cash off the hype like a few years ago. No, he really wanted to do a great movie that the fans would enjoy. And of course, it's not perfect. It has its flaws. But as a FNaF fan, I couldn't have wished for more, really. So I've imagined the worst things before going in there, but I really was not disappointed.
Like you said, obviously the hype was at its peak around like 2015, right after the release of FNaF 2, and right there it was pretty clear that a movie would come at one point. And you know, because it was like such a hyped up thing on the internet, many studios wanted to jump on the opportunity to make a movie based off this. And you know, of course, including Warner Brothers, which were given the rights at first by Scott Cawthon. And I don't know if you remember, but in 2020, I think Scott Cawthon released a few scripts that were, of course, unused. And a few of these scripts actually describe the very ones that Warner Brothers would have wanted to use.
Plushies take over Manhattan.
Yeah, the classic one. Plushies taking over Manhattan. Good riddance that this thing wasn't picked.
Oh my god.
But yeah, you can see they really wanted to pump out something fast, even if it would have come at the cost of the quality of the movie.
Money!
And you know Scott, he values quality above anything else.
Yeah.
I think barely any of his games ever had like a really terrible launch, you know, in terms of glitches, and maybe a few, but never like game-breaking stuff.
FNaF World.
he really took his time to polish the stuff most of the time.
Yes.
And this also comes down to this movie, because, you know, the movie didn't come out back in 2015, was postponed quite a bit. Studios were exchanged until it was in the right hands, in my opinion, with Blumhouse. Directors were changed, and you know, even though Chris Columbus, which was originally a choice for the movie, would have been pretty interesting, because that is like a director that has quite a bit of talent, it would have been a different movie for sure than the one we would have received now. But I think ultimately, with Blumhouse taking over and Amy Tami, the new director, it was ultimately the best choice, I think. And
yes,
you know, rewriting the entire script. I think Scott over the years, you know, when he released all the novels and the books too, he kind of, you know, I guess gathered a bit more knowledge about how to treat this franchise in other mediums. Because, you know, if you do a story in a game, that's one thing. If you do it in a movie or in a book, you have to like kind of switch up how to tell a story.
I imagine this must have been the biggest challenge for the movie, was how to tell the story, because in the games it was a really kind of unique way to do it. If you remember back in FNaF 2, you had like just the basic horror game, which was amazing at the time, but obviously it's hard to push in some story. You're just sitting in the office and you're occupied with defending against the animatronics, but the way he did it is like great. He made the death mini games, also back in FNaF 1 with the changing posters. It was so subtle. Also with the phone guy, you sneak in a bit of story, and I think this is one of the things that made FNaF so popular back in the day, especially when the second and third game came out, was obviously the story, the mystery around the story, and also just the way Scott told his story. And this, I imagine, must have been one of the big challenges to put on the big screen, because it's releasing in theaters. There are going to be many people who don't know much about, or if anything, about FNaF, and it's like this bridge you have to cross, that you make it satisfying for the fans and don't lose this original touch of the games, but also make it so anybody can understand the story.
Yeah, I agree highly on that. What made FNaF so special back in the day is that the story was basically never laid out in its entirety in front of you. You had to pick up the pieces by yourself. You had to like experience these mini games and all these little, I don't know, little hidden details in the background. You had to pick up on those yourself. And you know, when it comes to a book, you're essentially given like a written text, and it immediately reveals some stuff. Maybe a bit in a, you know, mystery way.
You can use metaphors and stuff.
Metaphors slowly alluding to it, but in the games it's much more, you know, you have an own impression of how things are, and of course therefore you have different theories about how things could go on or how things are, and that's really what made FNaF so special. these theories that the people came up with, MadPad and all the rest. I think nothing will ever match that again.
Yeah.
Many games have tried, and bringing up the topic mascot horror, which FNaF is ultimately a part of, but
it's the foundation of mascot horror.
It
basically.
Established the base, and it fucking carried it all the way. It did, yeah. But there were games like Hello Neighbor and Bendy and the Ink Machine all tried to do the same thing, but FNaF just nailed it down.
It's the original.
It's the original, and I think it perfected the formula, and that ensured its success.
Scott always thought of himself more as a storyteller. He always said that, and I think he did it great.
I must say that the first books he released, the first novel, being Silver Eyes, was a bit rocky, but that was not due to the story, because the story itself was pretty okay, I think. It was a bit of the writing, and that was a bit of an issue, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Some things were a bit weirdly formulated during those books. But as you can see, the core story of those novels was actually being used in the movie a bit. There were certainly a lot of parallels to the first novel.
Like the scene where Abby, I think, hides behind the arcade machines.
With Foxy being the one hunting her down, yeah.
That was pretty clear reference.
It was essentially the opening sequence of the book, and literally, taken one to one with how the scene goes.
Yeah.
And also other stuff.
The ending. Animatronics dragging William away. Like in the game, he was already in the safe room. He ran into the suit, laughed at them, and then the spring lock snapped. And in the book, they kind of dragged him away back in the back room. And I think it was a good choice to do it this way in the movie, because it just makes a better impression for the big screen. I think the animatronics dragging away, Freddy screaming. It's been memed already. The Freddy scream.
It just makes sense.
But yeah, of course.
It feels right in that instance, yeah.
And it's not like a victory screech to me. I think they made it really great. It's so much pain in this scream, and I find it fascinating because it is just an animatronic, just a mask without facial expressions. But I think they did a great job at portraying this pain, this suffering that these children endure, like 20 years locked away.
I think that scene where Freddy basically opens up his mouth and like does this like victory sound, I guess, where he like triumphs over the defeat of Afton, even though it's not entirely done with Afton, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that was one of the really unsettling parts about the movie, because seeing that endoskeleton in there, basically, trying to like literally make a human noise or so.
Yeah.
I would have wanted more of that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
maybe in this next movie.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the movie really did a good job at portraying how these kids basically inhabit these, towering robots, but are essentially not really at some moments aware of what exactly they are, because the scene where Abby just plays with them, this doesn't feel like they're like 5-ton robots walking around. It just feels like they're actual children, like, playing around, flocking around like we're used to.
I think the choice to include this kind of scene was not a bad choice, because it showed the audience that these are not these big monsters, these are literal children. It's children, they want to play. Maybe it was a kind of plot to get Abby in. We don't really know, but it really shows that these are just children. But I think on the screen it was a bit off-putting, because for the rest of the movie I think the actors inside the animatronics did a really great job. But I kind of felt when watching that scene, it kind of felt like really just people in costumes.
Yeah.
Even though the movements were still right, and I think they did a really good job, but it was a little bit too much for me. It really felt like just people inside. Like you said, it didn't feel like 5-ton robots moving around. It really did just feel like people in costumes. I
mean, I definitely get where they wanted the scene to go, what they kind of wanted to like tell the audience. Obviously, the OG FNaF fans, they don't need to be told that these are like children stuck inside there. So I guess this is like kind of an attempt to explain it to a new audience in a way. while giving the fans a funny new scene to work with, because ultimately this scene was fun.
Yeah.
It was a bit over the top, like you said, a bit too much, but it just barely at the edge.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know, I wouldn't have cut that scene, to be honest. I think I would have definitely left it in, and I think maybe just change the duration of it a bit.
Yeah, maybe a bit shorter. But what I also wanted to say, like, for an audience who doesn't know Five Nights at Freddy's, I think they explain it really well with the children. They got killed, they got stuffed in the suit. Vanessa explains it, and I think you could have done it a bit shorter, because it felt like, obviously this is the story about FNaF 1, this is the story about the missing children's incident, how they got stuffed into the suits, and these children are possessing the robots. That's kind of the core of the first game story. So they nailed that, but I think people got it. They got it. They didn't have to be explained this much. And I think the rest of the story suffered a little bit under that, because they put too much emphasis on the children possessing these robots. I would have liked to see a bit more horror elements, maybe, instead of another scene of Vanessa explaining, yeah, these are children. And like, they did a lot of scenes with that, and I think it was maybe too much. They could have used the screen time for maybe a bit more horror scenes and stuff. I think the audience got it pretty quickly, like with the drawings on the wall and the fort building scene and stuff. These are children. They literally show the children on screen many times instead of the robots.
Speaking of that, there's like a golden rule in filmmaking. It's basically show, don't tell.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where the movie missed the mark a bit, because Vanessa essentially was a character that was there to explain. And honestly, I think we should have really went into the direction of using minigames. The entire opening sequence of the movie, right after like the first prologue scene with the unfortunate, demise of the night guard.
With the not Markiplier.
Yeah. That minigame scene, the intro with Springtrap luring the children into the back rooms. It brought across the point. People immediately picked up on that this bunny definitely doesn't have, nice intentions towards those children. And I think more of that, keeping that mystique feature of FNaF intact a bit more.
But I think it's hard to get on screen. I think the opening scene was amazing. It was phenomenal with the soundtrack. It was great that they put in the arcade games. It was fantastic for fans. But I really don't see how they could have put more of that into the movie. How do you imagine these 8-bit minigames showing up on screen without getting really weird? So I'm not really sure how they could have done that.
It could have been incorporated with like flashback scenes showing the entire pizzeria in its prime, because that was like originally teased in the trailers. We had like a lot more footage of actual guests being there.
I would have loved to see more of that.
Yeah, I don't know why that was like not really shown.
On the Blu-ray maybe.
Maybe on the director's cut.
It's unfortunate that it didn't make the final cut.
In general, I feel like a lot of stuff ended up being on the cutting floor. But maybe in those flashback scenes you could have like shown a few of these arcade cabinets, and maybe like I don't know. Doesn't have to be an entire game, of course, that you play like from start to finish, but like, I don't know, something that indicates that these events that took place back there were kind of memorized by the entire location, because in the movie we find out that not only the animatronics are haunted, the entire place is kind of haunted.
Yeah, kinda, yeah.
You have these like self-shutting doors. You have the entire location basically crumbling in on itself during the final act.
Which was kind of weird, I think.
It was weird, but I think it's an interesting new addition that not only these animatronics are haunted, but like other stuff too. I mean, in this movie we had like the freaking killer machine that was Cupcake. Which was like the animatronic that did the least in the original games.
Yeah, it was way overused, I think. I would have loved to see... I get why they didn't do it. I think it's really hard to get that on these animatronic kills on screen, especially with the Freddy kill crushing the head. It was back in the shadows, so they didn't really show that much, which might be because of the gore that they didn't show, because they wanted a PG-13 rating. but I would have just loved to see more of the kills. Even the Foxy kill was off screen. The Bonnie kill was kind of off screen.
I think ultimately the PG-13 rating held it back.
Yeah, I think so. But I understand why they did it, because much of the FNaF audience is probably younger, and they couldn't have watched the movie with the R rating. And it's still a big production, and they need to make their money back. So I get it, but the cupcake was a bit much. It was an absolute beast.
Yeah, it was a bit unexplainable how this thing just leapt through the air and, managed to keep up with all the protagonists and stuff. It was...
I thought the scene with Bonnie and Chica at the vent, where Chica bends down, gets the cupcake inside the vent. It was fucking hilarious. I really laughed out loud in the theater. It was great. Also the menacing gaze at the camera afterwards. It was amazing. I loved it.
I think ultimately if you went into this movie expecting like a literal horror movie,
No.
I think, you would have set yourself up for a disappointment right away. It was intended for fun, and it was for the fans first and foremost, just like said by Blumhouse, literally a day before release.
Yeah.
Therefore, you of course have the critics that review other stuff, giving this movie a bit of a bad reputation. But you can see with the fan score on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie succeeded for sure. And
The critics butchered this movie. They hated it. They absolutely hated it.
but that's the fate of most video game adaptations.
Yeah.
They're always being treated a bit more unfavorably than the actual movie productions, such as, I don't know, movies such as Dune or Inception or stuff like that. It's like a different caliber, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Like, it's doing its own thing, and I think that's the most important thing.
It was a movie for the fans. It was there from the very beginning. Also, they didn't even have to say it. It's a Five Nights at Freddy's movie adaptation. Of course, it will be mostly for the fans. It's just simple as that.
And if you expect a fully coherent story, a completely intact one, in a FNaF-related product,
Yeah.
expect a lot of loopholes and plot holes. Those will be, I don't know, plastered up in the next game or the next movie or whatever, but
There's a reason why the Five Nights at Freddy's story was originally told in games, because it just works. With the mini games, with the mysteries, all the kinds of Easter eggs, the big grounds for theories. It wouldn't have worked in any other media, like in a book, in a comic, in a movie. It doesn't have the same opportunities to tell a story like that in this mysterious way that engages theorists and everything. I mean, I think there's a really big part of the FNaF fan base that didn't even play Five Nights at Freddy's.
for sure, I mean...
They just stumbled upon it on YouTube. They maybe liked the horror aspect at the beginning, but I think the most of the people are here for the story. Me too. I like the games. I played all of them except Help Wanted, but I love the gameplay of the first games, but it's just the story that is the big thing that keeps Five Nights at Freddy's going, and of course it's hard to put that on the screen. It's not a simple task.
I would even go as far as arguing that more fans bought like FNaF plushies or stuff than the actual games.
Maybe.
Yeah, like you said, most people are there to consume the lore, essentially.
Yeah.
Playing the games is like, of course, a big part of the community as well, but for the most part, the story is like the directing stuff.
Just go on the FNaF subreddit. You have tons of fan arts, people discussing the lore. It's really rare to see posts about the gameplay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Obviously, when Security Breach came out, there were a lot of gameplay posts, but this was mostly laughing at the glitches and stuff, like not gameplay tips. Oh, I'm stuck here. How can you help me? Oh, I like this feature about the game very much. You don't see that often. It's people discussing the lore. It's people discussing the things around it, movie release dates, teasers. What did Scott comment? This is the kind of stuff that drives the FNaF community further. And obviously, it's not easy to get this into a movie, but I think they did a pretty good job.
I think the FNaF community as a whole will essentially treat this movie as like another stepping stone for the lore, even though it's like in a separate universe. I think some stuff in that movie, I don't know, can be taken into consideration. I don't know how that will work out, but right now the story of FNaF is branching out even further with like release of the Security Breach Ruin DLC. I don't really know where it will go from here.
Well, there's Help Wanted 2 going to be released in a few weeks, I think.
We can literally expect anything.
Yeah.
And Vanessa being the daughter of William Afton, I don't know.
Well, obviously it's a different canon, and I think
It's in a different universe for sure, but
yeah.
I guess theorists will find some kind of ways to work this into the lore. I don't know how.
I really hope they don't take everything in the movie for granted, because I think within the movie's universe, there's a lot of stuff to theorize about. I also think I think it's a great decision to not have Mike as William Afton's son. Well, if you want to go in the direction that this movie went, because
I think it would have really bloated up the story even further.
yeah, and it would have made it way more confusing. And it's like on the screen, I think it would have been kind of cheesy. The big reveal: oh, it's my father, it's William. Oh, I forgot, I was traumatized. No, I think it's way better this way. I don't think he's entirely disconnected to it. I mean, there are theories going around that Mike and Garrett's father is Henry. Maybe we'll see in the future movies, but I think it's a good decision that they, and also it just makes it very clear also to the theorists within the community. It's Scott making clear, guys, this is not the game's canon. This is completely separate, which I think was also a big problem with the books, because Scott said in Steam posts and stuff, they are canon to themselves, and there are some elements.
They're like loosely connected, but
I don't think that was too great of a decision. So making this movie like a completely separate thing, I think it's handled way better than with the novels, because it's just so much confusion. You'd see it with MadPat's theories back when the novels came out, and he did it like Scott said it. He took some things and said, well, this fits into the game's canon, and people were outraged by it. The one fraction said, no, you can't use the books, it's a different canon, Scott said it, how dare you use that? And the other people said, no, the books are entirely the story of the games. It's exactly, the separation is important, I think, and it's a good thing that the movie makes it pretty clear from the very beginning. This is a different thing, while also telling the same story. I think that was a good decision.
yeah, I think the novels really like split the community in two factions.
Yeah.
And I think the movie really made it clear that this was like a separate thing.
Yeah.
But who knows? Crazy theorists still exist, so
It's a me.
I wasn't really alluding to anyone either. But if you feel spoken to.
I do.
Yeah. But yeah,
That's
in the end, I think Scott really did the best thing with his script.
Yeah.
Going into this direction.
Let's talk Easter eggs.
Right off the bat, what I noticed was obviously Sparky.
Yeah.
I think that was like the main point, because you had both a Sparky animatronic lying somewhere in the back rooms of the pizzeria, and you had the literal diner being called Sparky. With a very, very odd fellow. I don't know his name. I don't know who he was serving the people there.
He got us really good.
I don't know. This dude seems very smart, but I can't quite put my finger on it. I think he did something with like games and theories, but I'm not sure.
I think he made a let's play of FNaF 1 once. I think I remember.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It kind of like...
MadPat got us real good. He got us real good. Like he even reacted to the trailers, and I remember him seeing a GT Live reaction where he looked at the board where Dorko and Drazbowski and Ryan was on, and so, cool, these guys are in. I didn't want to be in the movie anyway, and so I bought it. I didn't think he would appear, and judging from the theater's reactions when we were in the showing, everybody was surprised. Like,
yeah, the ambience was insane inside the cinema at that scene.
Yeah, it got really loud inside the cinema.
It came completely out of the left field. Like,
yeah,
that was the last thing I expected in that scene, but it was great. I think, it didn't even feel like a forced cameo at all. It was so natural too.
Yeah.
It's just, I think if you do it like this, if you have like famous people within the community like celebrities or I don't know, YouTubers in this instance. Many movies that do that too kind of fail at making it feel like a actual part of a universe. It just feels like forced. He's just there for the sake of being there. But in this movie, sure, I mean...
Yeah, he got like 3 lines, he was a server, he didn't push himself into the scene.
Even what he said, for some reason, is just a theory. It fit. It fit perfectly fine, in my opinion.
And I also think he presented that line pretty good, where he could have gone a bit over the top. It's just a theory. No, he did it great. It sounded natural. So some people might say it's breakfast. Yeah, that's just a theory.
Yeah, also all the other cameras like Corey Extension
Yeah.
as the taxi driver. Even though I kind of don't buy the idea of an animatronic being able to like book a tour on a taxi. That scene where Golden Freddy travels with Abby. Even though that scene was a bit weird, I think Corey Extension definitely delivered, and
yeah,
he made that scene work.
But that was just a comic relief scene, especially with the mid credits scene again with him. It was obviously for comic relief, and it worked. Corey did a great job. Why do I always get the weirdos? It was great. I loved it.
I think the synergy between him and the balloon boy at the end, in the end credit scene, that was like, the perfect thing that we still needed at the end.
Yeah, it was great. Yes.
Speaking of balloon boy, damn, that fucker got me quite a few times. That was like the only jump scare in the entire movie that actually like evoked something in me.
Yeah.
I don't know. It
was unexpected with the how do you call it?
For like a close-up shot. Yeah.
It really came out of nowhere. He annoyed me in the games, but he didn't annoy me in the movie. It was definitely not too much. It was an Easter egg.
But I think he bred an entire new generation of FNaF fans to hate him. Because the balloon boy hate must flow again.
We need it. I think you can kind of compare that first balloon boy jump scare a bit with the cupcake jump scare in the fridge. Because the cupcake jump scare, it was obvious. It was classic Blumhouse, classic horror movie.
It was also teased in the trailers, obviously. And,
yeah. So, oh no, he's gone. Well, I wonder if there's gonna be a jump scare. Yeah.
I think in general the movie kind of played on these typical horror cliches. Just like I said, it's not really a horror movie. It's like more of a horror comedy, which is a thing that Blumhouse really likes to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, Happy Death Day or movies like those.
Mm-hmm.
They always play around with the medium of horror. Sometimes they manage to switch up the things and produce something new. But in this movie, you always had like these camera shots where the camera like pans around. Oh, there's no one here, and then he's probably standing behind him, and yeah, booyah.
Booyah.
It's
Well, to be fair, it would have been really hard to make this like a psychological horror movie.
For sure, yeah.
It wouldn't have worked.
I wouldn't have really expected that kind of movie.
Yeah, you couldn't have sprinkled in all these fun cameos, the Easter eggs, and in general the happy. Well, it's not a happy tone, but there were some scenes which were really not scary, and that's okay. I think it wouldn't have worked as psychological horror. That's not the FNaF that we are right now.
Speaking of the psychological aspect, I find it interesting that they kind of built in that dream theory. That was an Easter egg, but the entire thing with Mike having these repeating nightmares, and suddenly these souls of the children inhabit the dream too. I don't know, I found that interesting.
Yeah, it was a nice concept, that them appearing in the dream, Golden Freddy talking to him.
Yeah, it was also interesting that like William Afton, in the end, I guess, kind of influenced these dreams too, because obviously that offer of the children taking Abby in exchange for the information of Garrett, that wasn't coming entirely from the children themselves. In the movie, you can see that the faces of the children continuously become more, blurred out. They kind of lose their identity because they've been stuck in this use for just so long. I think the movie like takes place in the early 2000s, while the murders like took place obviously in the 80s. So like 20 years what we were talking about. And I don't know, it felt like a really quick switch in terms of the demeanor of the animatronics, that we suddenly, want to make Abby one of them. I mean, it would kind of make sense that we would want to have her as a company. But the way they delivered that, I think Afton kind of had his hands in that.
Yeah.
Because it kind of, calls back to these chips that we had in Sister Location.
The mind control chips.
Yeah, kind of in that direction, where you have like illusions suddenly in the minds of people. That was, I think, a huge topic in the Twisted Ones.
Yeah, it really was.
And again, another novel reference.
It also ties in a bit, I think, with the modern FNaF theme. If you remember back in Help Wanted, where the tape girl like made all these tape recordings, and you could really tell how it influenced her. It influenced her mind, and it might be just a loose connection here, but I just got the idea that it kind of feels the same way. Just you said, Afton kind of influenced these dreams. It's kind of in Help Wanted, where the tape girl gets influenced by Afton more and more. Also, just the presence of Vanessa in the movie. Obviously, that's not within the game's canon because they're like decades apart. The FNaF 1 and Vanessa.
I do find it interesting though that Vanessa was essentially part of the police force, being the daughter of Afton, kind of providing like a cover up for all his.
Yeah, it makes sense because I remember back when I did FNaF 1 theories, there were like these newspaper clippings, and it said, yeah, a suspect has been charged and everything, which was obviously referring to the purple guy back in the day. And it kind of never really made sense that they never caught him, that they never had any suspicion of it.
It seemed like somebody released.
Yeah, and I think that works in the movie. If his daughter is with the police force, maybe she hides some evidence, like it makes sense. He has his guys in the police force, so you could say.
I mean, obviously she's quite a bit younger than him. You know, back then when he committed these atrocities, I don't think Vanessa was like really born that time.
Yes, she was. There was an image shown of Spring Bonnie with the young Vanessa, and she held Garrett.
Yeah, okay, I guess, yeah, you're right. Yeah, she was a bit older then.
And if we think that Garrett was the first murderer, like in the games, with it's a parallel with if you think about the Take Cake to the Children's minigame, like the purple guy drove up with his car, kidnapped the kid, killed the kid, and then drove off again. It's a parallel to Garrett.
It was essentially the FNaF 2 minigame where you had like the purple car pulling up, stabbing the child outside, which was then again shown a bit more in the Pizzeria Simulator game with like the puppet huddling over it, which is the reason why many people are inclined to believe that Garrett may have actually inhabited the puppet.
Yeah, I think so too. It just makes sense. They're really setting up for it.
Yeah, but I mean these events basically where the young Mike together with his brother Garrett were on this trip in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of played, during the same time where the child must have been murdered.
Yeah, maybe a bit before that. I just get the feeling that Garrett might have been the first.
The puppet basically gives the lives to the animatronic.
Yeah.
Before they do their thing, essentially.
Also, what I think timeline-wise, Afton kidnapped Garrett, and then we see the picture of Afton standing next to Vanessa and Vanessa holding this plane, which was when the place was obviously still open. And the place must have shut down after all these murders. So I think Garrett was the first, maybe of these 6 children we know, the 5 in the pizzeria and Garrett. I think Garrett must have been the first of these 6 children.
One thing that I'm a bit, focused on in my mind is that Mike essentially, I don't know, he probably didn't really know about the pizzeria's location because he had no prior contact with these animatronics, obviously, like he said in the movie. This was all totally new to him. So I guess when Garrett was like killed back then, Garrett also, probably didn't have prior meetups with his location, but he was probably just taken there.
Yeah.
For some reason, because like, I don't know, I guess the pizzeria serves like as a lair to the
the villain's lair. Yeah, I think that's a question that will get answered in the following movies, because right now within the movie's canon it doesn't really make sense why Afton would drive into the woods in the middle of Nebraska and just kidnap this random child. There must be a a connection, and I think
He was just on a road trip, wanted to make a quick stop. Oh, we got a child here. Let's take.
child.
I will take your entire stock.
Yeah, there has to be a connection there, and I think they're gonna explain that in the second or maybe third movie. I think this seems like a loophole now, but there's definitely something more there. I think
It will be patched up, yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Maybe Mike's dad is a Henry after all, but then again, why didn't Mike know about Freddy's? It doesn't make sense. I think there's some connection there. I don't know. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do with that.
Will be cleared up, but again, I guess in this movie the priority was to, like, you know, boil down the basics of FNaF. You know, establishing the killer, how this entire thing with his holes works. I think that was like the main driving point of the first movie. The other movies are going to focus on the rest.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure in the second movie we will not only just focus again on one location, because the first movie basically incorporates stuff from FNaF 3 essentially, with the whole Springlock thing.
Well, kinda, because timeline-wise, yes, it appeared in FNaF 3 in the minigame, but timeline-wise, it might have even been before FNaF 1, the Springlock failure.
Yeah.
Well, no, it can't be, because after dismantled the animatronics and they're still intact in FNaF 1. No, it can't be before that, but I think it's like around that time. It can't be too, like, it must have been short after FNaF takes place.
It just essentially took elements from like these games and immediately, you know, cobbled them together. And I think that's going to happen in the next movie too, probably with like the inclusion of sister location. I could imagine that.
Do you think that? And it's like, well, maybe like timeline-wise, it would fit.
Because, you know, obviously William Afton did not just only kill children. At one point, he also constructed like these machines. I
wonder if they're gonna do that.
Yeah, I just really hope that we don't include this whole remnant thing, because that would be way too much. This remnant thing right now, yeah, don't need that in a follow-up movie.
Agony. Yeah, but I wonder if they're gonna go that far with the movies. Like Scott said, he wanted to make a trilogy. Obviously, you can't include every aspect of the games, not every storyline. So I'm really interested to see if they're going to include sister location at all, because I imagine an outside viewer to get just really confused with the locations and what happened when. So maybe they just keep it a bit simpler and leave sister location out. But I would really love to see the Funtime animatronics on the screen from the Jim Henson Company. I think
they're going to be arguably even more impressive of a technical feat.
Amazing.
With all these panels moving, yeah, I can already see it in my head.
It would look so great. But I don't think they're gonna do that. I'd love to see it. But, you know, and a different thing I'm excited for in the next movie is Mangle. Because they already had like a big challenge with Foxy, because they couldn't put an actor into Foxy. And I think it's gonna be really, really interesting to see how they're gonna put Mangle on the screen. With the garbled radio noise, there's a big potential for horror.
While we're on that with Mangle and the whole thing with the ordeal of constructing a functioning Foxy animatronic, I'm so glad that this movie really focused on practical effects.
Yeah, definitely.
There was some CGI for sure.
Obviously, with the cupcake flying around and stuff.
Every movie nowadays needs a bit of CGI, but there was relatively few post-production things.
I think they used CGI as it's supposed to be used. Like if you look at big Marvel productions these days, like everything is CGI. And me personally, it's my opinion, it's not the way CGI is meant to be used. CGI should be like, I think Christopher Nolan treats CGI very well.
I think he really said like invisible CGI is the best.
Yeah,
the one that you don't notice.
He really focuses on practical effects, just like they did in this movie, and CGI should only be there to enhance it a bit, to make it a bit more realistic in some cases. If you look at really old movies like Star Wars, the first Star Wars, for example, they did a fantastic job with the practical effects, but like all these years later, obviously it shows.
Yeah.
And you can still rely on practical effects these days and just enhance them a little, so they will look great in 30 years.
They don't age.
This movie will look great in 50 years because they really filmed it on set. They built these animatronics. They're not gonna look trash. Many Marvel movies these days, in 50 years, you will look at them and see it maybe like we see computer animations from the 90s, from the 2000s. Like, you know, when you look at these today, you tell yourself, like, what the hell is that? But back in the day, when you looked at these, you were like, wow, this
was
looks
like a
so
milestone.
great. This is so great. Like, and I think it's the same thing with Marvel movies these days. Right now, it's great CGI. It has a big budget behind it. It looks good. But in a few years to come, it will look as trashy as 90s animations look to us now. And that's the thing that won't happen to the FNaF movie.
I think the practical effects in this movie really nailed the immersion even further in this movie. This place felt real because it was real. Everything was built up. No green screens, no anything. The light cascading of the characters, it was all the real thing. And generally, the entire theme of the movie with the lighting and the different color situations. Imitami and their camera team, they did a really good job at choosing a good color palette for this. This movie like popped in many scenes in terms of the lights and stuff.
It also felt just like FNaF 1 at many times because it might have been the color palette. Like FNaF 1, I don't know, it feels kind of dark, orange, brownish at some times, and they did a good job with the color palette. And I'm looking forward to seeing the other movies. If you're in the FNaF 2 location, will they use the same color palette? If we're in Fazbear Frights, maybe in the second, maybe in the third movie, will it have like this green vibe like the third game had? I think it plays a big role, especially for audiences who know FNaF well, a big role in the immersion. If you have the same color palette, you have the practical effects. They built the whole pizzeria inside a warehouse. Like they didn't even build the main stage someplace and then the office elsewhere. No, they literally made the layout. It worked. It just worked.
And I didn't even mind that they changed up the layout, because obviously the FNaF 1 location, it wouldn't have worked, to be honest.
It works in the game.
The entire location and the position of the office in the original game doesn't make sense. Why are there like two hallways connected to each other that like lead to nowhere essentially?
It's the office. It worked in the game, but it doesn't work within the movie. And I think the changes that they made were great. Also, the security office kind of reminded me a bit of FNaF 3. Like you have the vent on the right side. The vent.
The only thing that was essentially missing from the FNaF 3 office being this one was like the window.
The window, yes.
Yeah, but I guess, definitely really cool with the inclusion of a vent.
Yeah.
Because they actually like show an actually for once capable character in a horror movie that like immediately does the thing everybody would do, trying to pry open that fucking vent.
Yeah.
It's just finally a smart horror character that still dies, but I mean
well, it really shows in some horror movies. Also, Blumhouse is also guilty of that. People are just so fucking stupid. It's a classic thing. Oh, let's split up. Yeah, that's a great fucking idea to split up.
Split up, Fast Gang.
Fast Gang. Yeah. No, I think also the acting was top notch, especially with Matthew Lillard. And
he killed it. He absolutely
killed it, that role, and the children.
That too.
But also the children were great, especially the Abby. Abby really was Abby. I think she kind of played herself, but in a good way. It's really, really convincing.
That like childlike wonder really captured there.
I think I would run around the place like Abby too if I was that age. You see all these fantastical lights, the animatronics which are alive, they play with you. It's just amazing, and as Abby's role was just perfect.
Yeah, I think these drawings she did, and the like scenes where like she was staying at the home of Mike, where these children of his home were always kind of present there. I think as soon as she entered that place, she was like really familiar with it. It was like I don't know. I guess she really felt at home there.
Also, was a great symmetry with they explained with the doctor scene and stuff how much meaning drawings have for children, and then in the end it's like the big thing that Abby puts on this drawing of Afton killing the kids, and I think it was a great build-up. Like, everybody could understand it. They showed that drawings are important. They showed that these animatronics are essentially just kids with the fort scene and stuff. And then in the end, it tied neatly together. I think it worked pretty good.
Now that you mention it with the drawings, we spoke earlier that the 8-bit minigames could have been like utilized a bit more to like tell the story instead of like really telling it with a person like Vanessa. These drawings could have been utilized too, of course, because in the FNaF games, yeah, most of the time these are like scary little Easter eggs in the background with like scary faces on it, woo. But like using it for like actual story and lore with like the yellow rabbit, it would have drove home the point a bit more, I guess, if they kind of showed a bit more of that, because drawings, they contain the truths.
I think you're right about that, especially because they established how important these drawings are. They might have been a bit underused, but also at the same time, I'm playing the devil's advocate here. At the same time, I think it just worked great how they did it in the movie. It didn't feel overused, it didn't feel trashy, it felt just right with the drawings, and
the balance was strong.
Yeah. Maybe that would have been a bit off balance with more drawings, but I like the idea of telling the story a bit more in the drawings. Maybe we're gonna see that in the second movie or so.
And now that I have to think about it, in the dreamlike sequences, you had like the golden Freddy child.
Yeah.
Like in the game lore, it's Cassidy, I think. In this movie universe, it's now inhibited by I don't know, a boy now or something. There was like this one scene where he also like painted the yellow rabbit.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And I think more of that in the dreams, instead of constantly chasing each other. More of that, like he comes, the children disappear, but it was always something new, being drawn on the floor, and he slowly figures it out. Maybe even like, I don't know, show a car taking a child away or something. That could have been like...
Could have been good, yes. But I really like that with the drawing of the rabbit. So tell me who did take my brother, and he just paints the rabbit, And he needs Abby to understand it, because Abby has this different connection to the animatronics. Mike even says it himself. Like, I don't think they like me very much, but they love Abby. And he even asks her to ask them who took Garrett. Who took him? Also, that was kind of a highlight for me. The relationship between Mike and Abby. It felt so natural, so realistic. This brother-sister, where Mike carries her through the hallway with this cute vest, and this connection was just perfect. The actors really did a great job there.
The chemistry really worked out. I think the casting of this movie definitely nailed.
I think Vanessa just got a bad script.
She got a bit of the last stick.
She had a bad role, but I think the actress was still great. It was good. Like, it felt really cheesy whether they play with animatronics, they build the fort. Then Abby gets shocked by the guitar, and all of a sudden Vanessa is like, if you're gonna take her back to this place, I will shoot you. It felt really really out of place.
In one moment she was like, oh, we have to finish and wrap up this movie.
Yeah.
It was like a sudden, kicking a new gear.
Mm-hmm.
From then on you had this like really, really quick climax. Suddenly the children all turn on Mike, which, like, of course in hindsight makes sense. William influenced them. But it's just... the ending was a bit too fast-paced. I think we said earlier that they focused a bit too much on like establishing this whole thing with like the aunt wanting to take away Mike. Yeah, the aunt was a nice element. It made sense. Giving Mike the incentive to actually...
And I think that was kind of her only purpose in this whole movie. Giving Mike the incentive to take the job.
It was like the driving force.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pushing him over the edge to just accept even the shittiest job you can possibly pick in this universe.
Yeah.
But there was like too much of her in the end. And for some reason, when Golden Freddy pays them a visit at the home, she was
just
there.
laying on the floor.
She was there, and the next moment she wasn't. She was just out of the movie entirely.
It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's just weird.
Do you think she's gonna return in the next movie? Do you think she's still alive, or?
I don't want her to return. I don't think she's dead, really. I think if they wanted to show that she's dead, they would have made it clear she's dead. But also, I don't think it doesn't really matter at all. She's dead. Also, it was just so weird because in the very end, she's also just gone. They don't acknowledge her at all. Like, is she in the hospital? Did she die? If she died, what happened? Like, she died at Mike's home. Mike would be the prime suspect for a murder. She's just gone. She did her job. She pushed Mike to take the job, and now she's just we don't need her anymore. Just gone.
It's like that one meme where like Death walks along to a different person, and the person asks, "And did I do my purpose?" Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Was I good at it? No, you weren't.
Yeah, it really fits quite well. It really feels like they cut a lot of scenes out, especially from transitioning from the fourth scene to the end fight of the movie. It feels like there's a lot of scenes missing, and it shows.
Yeah, I think
really
originally
quick
it was
rush.
like rumored that the movie would have had a runtime of 3 hours, which
Yeah.
I do believe because many movies like exceed their target length in the
Mhm.
end, and they have to be like heavily cut it down. And I think nowadays in the movies you compete for the attention of the viewers.
Yeah.
We have I don't know, a bit of a unforgiving situation right now with movie goers.
Mhm.
Many are willing to go through 3 hours non-stop without a break, and others aren't. And the younger the demographic becomes nowadays, you
But
have to like kind of bring it across a bit more quickly.
I think generally you're completely correct, but I think especially in FNaF's case it wouldn't have been that big of a deal because the FNaF fans were so hyped up for it.
They are patient, yeah,
They would have gone in a 6-hour movie.
for sure. I mean, me included, but
Yeah.
I guess maybe Blumhouse,
Yeah,
still
or-
had some say in this movie after all. But
I think it might have been Universal Studios, the big, like they financed the movie and
the
stuff.
publisher essentially,
Yeah, I think they have the last word when it comes to runtime.
yeah.
Also, the runtime was okay.
It was okay. I mean,
Was it too
I would have
long?
even
Was it
expected
short?
less, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
I
Like
was
just
pleasantly
90
surprised.
minutes would have been the classic for this
Yeah,
kind of movie.
It would have been too short, way too short.
Yes,
Those
obviously.
those 30 or 20 minutes more, they definitely are needed.
Yeah.
You could argue that the scenes with your aunt could be, shrunk down a bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the runtime in the end was okay.
Yes, it was. It's just a rushed ending. But also Scott said that he's listening closely
Mm.
to the critiques and everything. And I think the second movie is gonna be even better
Yeah.
if they take the feedback really seriously. And we know Scott usually does. I think there's a very bright future for the FNaF movies.
I think you have to take into consideration that for Blumhouse this was like, taking a step in new waters.
Mhm.
Kind of trying out new stuff, seeing how far I can go, how far they can push some things, and how far they cannot push other things.
Mhm.
It was like testing the waters, seeing if this could work. Now they have the confirmation this movie is really successful. Don't let the critics deceive you.
It's the most successful Blumhouse movie of all time.
The biggest opening in terms of horror movies.
Yeah.
Right now for Blumhouse, and also in the last time.
And I think that gives them also a kind of an opportunity for the next one to say to Universal, hey, Universal, our movie was a great success.
I mean,
Why not have 3 hours of runtime?
I mean, everybody's
Huh?
like expecting the sequel, and we don't know if it's going to be a sequel or a prequel. Could be both, really.
I really think it's gonna be a sequel because it doesn't work well with moviegoers to just publish a prequel. I think the movie will be called Five Nights at Freddy's 2 with maybe an extra addition to the title, but it will be Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
What I could expect is like 2 branching storylines running alongside each other, one in the past and one
That would be kind
in
of
the present, and then like kind of converging at one point, where I don't know, meet up with a puppet
yeah,
or so.
maybe. It's a bit like FNaF 3. You play it in 2020, 2023 or something, but the recordings you hear are from way back in the 80s.
Mm.
You also kind of have these 2 stories which branch into each other at one point. You get all the security tapes from Phone Guy, and then you learn about the safe room, you learn about the spring-lock suits, how it all worked. Then you also have the mini games which show, and at the end it all comes together really neatly in FNaF 3, I think.
Mm.
Get the information about the suits, about how Freddy's operated at the time, how they worked, how there was a spring lock failure at the sister location, blah blah blah. And then you get the mini games, and then in the end, after you played all 5 nights, it all works together. You have the spring trap here, you know who he is, how he got in there. It makes sense with the Springlock suits. And if they have this kind of approach for another movie, I would be all here for it. I think it would be great.
I'm curious whether Afton is like already going to return in the next movie.
He always comes back.
I mean, of course, people expect it, and there's probably going to be like a scene showing his whereabouts or so. But I think they will hammer down on him in the third movie a bit more. I think
Yes.
we can't really expect that yet in the second movie. I think they are going to really save it up for a big conclusion in the end.
Yes, they have to. Really.
Yeah, but I definitely want to see more of Matthew Lillard. I think
Well,
that's
Matthew
where the flashbacks can help, or
Yeah.
like the prequel aspect of the next movie or so.
That's what I wanted to say, because Matthew Lillard confirmed that he signed a 3-movie contract, so he's gonna be in all 3 movies. And whether the movie is gonna be a complete prequel or just a sequel, it doesn't really matter, because I think the only good way you can work in Afton in the second movie is with flashbacks, with scenes from the past, maybe how he kidnapped these kids. Maybe we get scenes with Henry. What are his motives for killing kids? Is he just a psychopath, or does he have some motivation to start with that? And obviously he's a psychopath, but like, does he have a pushing factor? Like in the games you have that with Elizabeth inside Baby and stuff.
And the death of crying child.
The death of crying
Which
child.
is broken.
Exactly. Yeah. You have like this starting point when Afton started killing these kids, and I think there's a lot of potential for the second movie to work with flashbacks to explain Afton more. And I think there's really nothing that the fans want more than to see Matthew Lillard, because he just absolutely killed his role.
In every scene he was in, he stole the show.
Yeah.
Like, even as a boring scene as the one was where he like provided a new job for Mike.
Yeah.
But that scene in theory would have been the most boring thing you would ever seen on screen.
Yeah.
But because it is him, he's just has this charm. It just makes the role work so well. Because for the fans, of course, you obviously know that this guy is like the villain.
It's him.
You see him. But also for new moviegoers, that scene, there was something strange about him right away that everybody could notice.
It just really builds up suspension, because he's such this weird,
Like, why
kind of explosive guy.
Why
with
would he be
his
suddenly
laugh.
so enthusiastic after reading the last name of somebody?
Yeah, it was just something different. Also, that he was the phone guy, kind of in this movie.
That was nice, yeah.
Symmetry, my friend. Symmetry.
But also Matthew Lillard putting in the entire dedication of his life into preparing for his next appearance by rotting inside the Springlock suit.
That's some real dedication. Yeah.
Yeah, so the next movie is going to come out in 20 years. Until then, he should.
But it's gonna be worth it. He's gonna be such a rotten corpse then. Just it looks so authentic.
Rotten Tomatoes? Yeah, he's going to take that literally rotten corpse.
I always come back. But I really also really liked Matthew Lillard's like how he played the role, because from the games, I think it was PJ Haywood who voiced Afton.
The British guy.
British, exactly. No offense to the Brits here. But yeah, I think for the games it worked well, because he was this really menacing, dark murderer dude. In the games, he only had a few lines, and it just worked perfectly. The iconic "I always come back" line, it's just perfect for the games. But it works even better with Matthew Lillard's acting style in the movie. When you really see him on screen, he has multiple scenes. He talks with Mike. How he delivered that, he wasn't this menacing dude. He always comes back. No, he was like kind of in a weird way sympathetic, but also off-putting. Like
he felt a bit more real, you know. He felt like an actual psychopath that you would come across in real life.
Exactly.
Because in reality, sometimes you can't tell whether you're speaking to an actually sane man or somebody that has like a huge kill count.
Yeah.
It's just, and that I really like that, because Matthew Lillard sold that.
I love to see more of him. I need to see more of him as William Afton. He's the perfect cast for this role.
There's like one thing that's a bit debated, and that's concerning his reaction to the Springlocks activating. How did you like that? Do you think it felt appropriate for him to react that way? Because some people say it was like too relaxed, too calm. Others argue that, you know, with these spring locks, you know, puncturing your ribcage, you wouldn't really have the air to, like, you know,
Yeah.
let a scream or so.
I mean, the only real depiction we ever got in the games was the 8-bit minigame,
Mhm.
where he bled out. He was shaking and shivering and bleeding out. But I think what most people had in mind was this really popular audio clip that's going around the internet for years now, where it says, "Michael, don't leave me here, Michael," and then this really loud screaming. This is what people had in mind. But if you wanted to do that in the movie, you would have need to have more gore in this scene.
It would have definitely had to be R-rated at that point then.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons why the scene was acted out like it was in the end. But also they wanted him to talk afterwards. Like he had a few lines still to deliver, and you know they couldn't have made it the big screaming guy like in this audio clip. So yeah, I'm not too satisfied with how the acting was in that scene, but I still think it was a pretty good scene because you just saw it in his eyes. He is this extremely evil guy. He knows he's gonna die, but he also knows he's not defeated. That's what the line I always come back in the movie is all about. He knows he's gonna die in the suit. This is why he puts on the rabbit's head again. He knows he's gonna come back. And
he was like really confident in that.
Yeah, like
but
100%.
That was like the exact opposite in the games, where he was like seemingly unsure whether he would, you know, actually make it or not.
But here, I think it just worked altogether. Worked really, really well. Also, he wasn't even that mad or that unsettled about the spring lock. Like
it was like a mild inconvenience for him.
Kind of. But he obviously made attempts to get out of the situation, especially in the end with the Golden Freddy kid, where he reaches out for the kid and like he obviously doesn't want to be locked in there in the suit, and he's obviously in a lot of pain. But you just saw it in his eyes and how confidently he put on the head. He knows he's not defeated. He knows he's gonna come back, and there's really nothing that Mike, Vanessa, or the animatronics can do at this point to prevent him coming back. He's gonna come back. He's not finished. You're not going to get rid of him that quickly.
It also just shows his obsession with like this, you know, springlock suit, because he used that to, you know, lure all the children back there, and I think he kind of identified with it, and now he really wanted to become one of it. He saw, okay, there's no escape route, I am going to be probably stuck in here.
Yeah. So I'm gonna possess this fucking suit. This suit is me.
Suit is his, yeah.
It's the yellow rabbit man. The rabbit man.
Aubergine man.
Aubergine man.
Inhibiting the golden suit, yeah.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah. But I think, you know, I think he did the best with the scene he could. I think the script kind of dictated it to make it in a bit more child-friendly tone. I mean, obviously there was still some gore with like these things puncturing him, which again was an incredible practical effect. That was not CGI.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that this was like a build-up model with like the textile of his shirt being punctured.
Yeah, it was a close-up shot with the thing. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was like actually a practical effect, and just that just sold it. And it also was like a pretty cool and interesting depiction of springlocks, because in my mind I always envisioned them a bit differently, with like multiple little like needle-like things being, you know, launched into your entire body.
Yeah.
But here it was interesting, and also how we like demonstrated it earlier with the Eleanor doll.
Yeah, that was a great addition, especially for fans, for non-fans.
For non-fans, yeah.
It was a good thing, yeah.
Because everybody was on the same page then, that these springlocks are pretty deadly.
Yeah, don't go in there. Not a good idea. Don't touch that.
Yeah, but again, these practical effects in this movie really impressed. I saw some footage of behind the scenes, where again, you know, you had these like actors sometimes inside the suits, which like perfected the movement. I think these actors really nailed like these robotic motions. Yeah, you know, you could argue that in the Ford scene, they kind of let it drop a bit.
But the movements were still on point.
They were still pretty good.
It was just the direction. it felt a
but-
bit weird.
But then, of course, for other scenes, you had like the entire cast, including Foxy, of course, represented by actual moving animatronics. And you know, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to engineering, since I do it myself now in my career. And the Jim Henson Creature Shop, I don't know, they really worked the magic on this one. I mean, obviously they are iconic for, you know, bringing the Muppets, some of the most, you know, famous puppets you've ever had in cinema history, essentially.
Yeah, definitely.
They just brought these characters to life, also with their expressions. Some say they overdid it with like the eyebrows moving too much, but
I don't think so.
I think it
worked
fit
great.
perfectly. I especially like the scene where like Mike encounters the animatronics up close for the first time, with like Freddy giving him this look.
Yeah,
It was very subtle, but it just, you know,
it was good. It was
I don't think they overdid it at all. And I think it just, these expressions just really show the attention to detail even further. You even had like the hair on top of Chica's head
everything
moving around.
Yeah, it was moving.
They didn't have to do that, but
No,
they
but
did.
They did.
Just, you know, a detail that they wanted to include.
It's amazing. Yeah, it really brought life to these creatures as well.
Also the accuracy of them,
Yeah.
off the charts. These character models, I think they even look better than the originals, to be honest. They look like they are being pulled straight out of the games.
Down to the last bit of withering.
It was
on
perfect,
the
down to the last
Perfect.
minute detail. Yeah.
Perfect.
And the spring Bonnie suit.
It looked great.
I don't know, I see sometimes in the cosplay community of FNaF, they try to do the Springlock suit, and it always like either looks too bulgy, too big, but this like, it just looked like it would have actually been used by like actual actors in a Fazbear location.
Yeah, it really sold it. Obviously, they have a much bigger budget than cosplayers. I think they also do a pretty great job many times, but like, this was out of the park. It was amazing.
Or like, you know, the whole Foxy animatronic just being able to stand on these really thin little legs. And one thing I really liked is in the first reveal trailer of the movie, you had like this one scene where Foxy steps down on one of the balls from a ball pit. And it looked a bit, you know, cracky in the first shot.
Like he weighs like 5 kilos.
It lacked a bit of weight in that original shot, and they completely reworked that in the movie. And you know, it's really cool that we used like these effects that are like as old as time itself in terms of movie magic, where you had like, you know, okay, obviously we can't really show the legs of Foxy moving the entire time, but you can like show the feet stepping down, or like kind of give it the illusion that this upper torso moves, but while the rest is extremely static. They did that in the Terminator movies.
Yeah.
Exactly the same with the endoskeleton.
Yeah.
I just really liked that, you know, as a fan of movie making and practical effects, that was really...
They really sold the animatronics. It looked
and again,
realistic,
if they had just used a CGI effect in that scene,
would have been
that would have really
worse.
lost all the charm.
Yeah, would have been so much worse.
Yeah.
It was really... That is still the biggest highlight of the movie.
Yeah.
Like I saw these models obviously in the trailers and in Doghouse videos before the movie, and I was just amazed, and it worked so well on screen. It was just fantastic.
So yeah, so we talked about the practical effects, obviously top notch. Nothing to complain about at all. Like that's 10 out of 10, even 11 out of 10. That was nothing could have been better than that.
I wish the critics would have put more emphasis on that, because
yeah,
they really budget.
When you had the set design, also really top notch stuff.
It was perfect.
Yeah, the set design just worked. They like took the FNaF 1 map and made it more believable, and just, you know,
without losing the charm.
Yeah, and fitted it out with so many details, and also the other locations, the diner and the home, just really felt believable. That we saw like actual homes that somebody would live in.
That's true.
And then you had like the actors. I think the highlight was, of course, Matthew Lillard.
Yeah.
Josh Hutcherson was delivering a good performance, I would say.
It wasn't an Oscar-worthy performance, but it really wasn't bad.
It worked for his role, because you have to imagine this guy in the movie rarely gets any sleep.
Yeah, it worked.
It just works for somebody who's like at the brink of, you know, financial hardship.
Yeah.
Because you obviously had like these delinquencies problems, and
yeah.
But yeah, another really highlight were definitely the child actors. And I think all of them,
100%.
Ruby Piper and yeah, the entire cast of the children, they have a bright acting career ahead.
I hope so.
For sure.
I hope
It's
so.
like the situation of It all over again, where you had like the cast of these,
Yeah.
at the time, relatively unknown characters.
Mhm.
But then you had like Finn Wolfhard acting in Stranger Things, and
he's
now
a
he's like,
star now.
he's a real star now, and also, yeah, all the others. Really, really
It's a
cool
bright
stuff.
future ahead for the movies and also for the actors.
Yeah, so acting, set design, prop design, the camera settings were also cool, color saturation. Music
amazing.
was also really cool. The Newton brothers that were the composers for this one.
Oh,
I love the
intro
opening sequence.
The opening sequence.
And I also really like the credits where they played Grandfather's Clock.
Yeah.
That gave me goosebumps. That was so well done.
That's a really good tease for the puppet in the next movie.
Yeah, and you know, the only thing that was a bit lacking was, I guess, the pacing in the story.
The
But
pacing was really off, yeah.
I
But
think, yeah.
I can excuse that as a FNaF fan.
But other than that, I think my rating as a fan, definitely inclined to give it, 7.5 out of 10 for sure. Maybe even 8 if I'm going
Yeah.
to push it a little bit.
I think
Definitely due to
say
the
the same.
prop design. And as a non-fan, well, obviously not the most perfect horror movie ever, but I would also like give it a 7 at least.
I really can't rate it as a non-fan. I can't put myself into that mental position that there's too much attachment for me to
Yeah.
a FNaF story, and I just can't imagine not knowing anything about the story and how it would have felt, how I would perceived it.
I think in no way, like what the critics imply, that this is a bad movie. It's a fun movie, and it's definitely a high production movie.
Yeah.
It's not like a B movie, not like Willy's Wonderland. Even though that movie was
It was
great.
also good
It was a good one.
It was good fun.
And like you said, right now, the most important thing is that the movie is fun, and this one definitely was.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna all agree on that.
I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 as a fan.
Mhm.
I went in with pretty mid and low expectations, and I couldn't stop grinning afterwards. It was
There were moments where I was like, did they really just do that? With
Yeah.
like the fort building scene, but just mere seconds after I was like, yeah, this works for me.
yeah, definitely. And when they played the opening credits with the 8-bit mini games, my heart was warm. I realized I'm literally sitting in the theater watching the FNaF movie and Scott Cawthon's name on screen and these 8-bit mini games with this amazing soundtrack. It felt like a childhood dream come true, sitting there and watching these opening credits.
Yeah, it's been some time since we last talked about this movie, like 4 years ago.
Yeah. I
Back
think
then it
so.
was relatively uncertain when it would come out eventually, but now we are sitting here in a post-FNaF movie world.
Still feels kind of surreal, does it?
It definitely feels like this movie, you know, opened a new era of FNaF.
Yeah, it definitely did. I'm
It's,
looking forward
it's
to
now
what's
not
coming.
only mainstream on, the internet with the games, but now has a movie, and a movie really leaves a huge imprint.
This franchise it's going to get so big.
It's not going to die anytime soon,
No,
that's for sure.
no, FNAF's here to stay.
I think the hype has definitely returned now.
I think after Sister Location, we had like a big break and nothing really came out. Or
We had like some droughts, sometimes, but right now
And-
we were eating good this year, and we
Yeah.
still have Help Wanted 2 coming out. We had already had the DLC for Security Breach.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to really
FNAF's not going anywhere.
have to starve anymore.
No.
Meneb, it's been a while since the last time we've talked this extensively about the topic, but
Recording at least, yeah.
it was definitely a return.
I always come back.
You do, yeah. I think right now it was just really fitting to talk about this.
Yeah,
We-
was the biggest thing in FNAF history.
we were already planning to do something, but we were always like, it was always like too few stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
And right now was a perfect opportunity, and of course we would jump on it. And I hoped you enjoyed this review.
Thank you everybody who's been sticking around for this long.
If you made it till the end, congrats. I didn't expect that anybody would watch this long. But if you did, I really appreciate that. And
Comment without cupcake if you're still here.
if you're still here, yeah. And that was our review of the movie. And again, thank you for your time. It was really nice. It was a pleasure. And
Do it at At the latest, when the next movie comes out, you're gonna hear
For sure, for sure. And yeah, so thank you everybody for watching. Meneb is going to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
And I'm going to say goodbye, farewell, and have a great life. Bye.
guys.
Bye.